All right, hello everyone. Trying something a little bit different. This time I solved this Scriddle, recorded myself doing it without over commentary, and now I'm going to do commentary watching it back. So I don't know exactly how this is going to go, whether it's going to be any different, but I thought this might be an interesting variation to try. So this is Scriddle 21, I think. And I started out by... I experimented with like annotations and stuff like that. And I started like, okay, I'm going to try and... let me just pause that for a little bit. I'm going to try and surround tiles with the number, like, so that they're kind of touching the number of tiles that they say they should be touching. And at first I thought I was really onto something here because I realized, like, oh, I got down to the bottom right-hand corner and I was like, oh, actually, this is kind of interesting because basically I was imagining it in the one tile radius. So, you know, you basically imagine a tile surrounded by 8 of its neighbors. And I was noticing that, oh, this actually makes an interesting path, and it felt like the constraints were going well. And then I found this node here, where there's an 8. An 8 would mean that the node had all of its surroundings shaded in, but there was another circle underneath it, which I didn't know the meaning of because it has no number in it, but it very clearly meant that I couldn't surround the number, which basically instantly put my theory out because this number should have 8 neighbors, but it can't. Obviously there's a 7 on the left as well, which is similarly impossible. There are a few other numbers, but the 8 was the moment I realized it. So at this point I'm like, okay, it can't be that. I need to try something else. So I wanted to just get a guess in, and I just started thinking like, okay, well, it could be columns and rows. I think there are exactly 8 spaces in this column. So I put that in, and we break one rule, which is pretty interesting. It's broken on almost everything, which is a little bit confusing. I don't think I noticed at the time, but the circle without a number, it's not broken on. Probably wouldn't have given me that much useful information. But I start testing some other theories, like maybe it's important to block off the number with that number of unshaded squares. Then I got a little bit confused because left-clicking on the numbers shades them, but right-clicking on them also shades them. So I couldn't tell because normally in Scriddle, right-clicking is used for annotations, so not part of the puzzle, and left-clicking is used for part of the puzzle. At least that was my understanding. So I was trying to figure out, like, oh, does shading it actually mean something? So I'm kind of testing out multiple theories at once here. I tried surrounding the 0 there, while also testing out some shading on the 5s. But then I noticed the shading disappears after you guess, whereas the other parts of your guess doesn't. So I concluded that shading the numbers was actually just annotations, which it turns out it is. So I still feel like I haven't made any progress at this point, and it's quite stressful because it's one of these all or nothings. Like at this point, I haven't succeeded in doing anything correctly. Like I haven't satisfied any of these numbers. So what I really need is like, I need to kind of shotgun approach some stuff to just see if I can satisfy one of these numbers, because from that I can kind of intuit what we might be looking for. So I start doing a bunch of different patterns, so like adjacencies, surroundings, things in the same column or row. I just put some shapes down that I think are going to tell me something, and sure enough they do. So I've actually accidentally, I mean not accidentally, but you know, some of my attempts have satisfied these numbers and some of them haven't. So it's really interesting. Start thinking about like, why are some of them not satisfied? What would it take to satisfy them? The 7 one is interesting because obviously we can't surround it, so that's obviously not why some of these numbers were satisfied. The 3 and the 2 in the bottom right, and also the 1 have been satisfied. But, you know, although it looks like they're surrounded, it's obviously not that. Like, that was my initial theory, if you remember, but it's clearly something like that. So I start playing around by just putting down like lots of squares. And the 5 in the top left is interesting because there's kind of this channel of tiles, which is really the only place you can put tiles near it. So again, I'm putting just like a bunch of tiles down, different shapes, different arrangements. In the top right there, that 2 has 2 separated adjacent tiles next to them. I wanted to test like, oh, do they have to be contiguous? They clearly don't because that 2 is satisfied in the top right. So I haven't formed a theory yet, but like it's clearly like, it's beginning to look like it's to do with connectivity. And I begin to theorize that, okay, what matters is from the number, can I walk to that number of shaded tiles? And this is this is the first time where I'm like, oh, this would actually be an interesting puzzle. Like this could be correct because what it means is not that there is a single path leading from this number, but there could be multiple paths. So in the case of this 2 in the top right-hand corner, I can go left, which is one shaded tile, or I can go south, I can go down, which is one shaded tile. So it is technically adjacent to 2 shaded tiles. And that means that I could start trying to solve this 8, because it meant that like if these paths went further away, I can still walk there, even though they're not next to me. And that means that I can start like producing these winding paths that still satisfy the numbers, but go in different directions. So at this point, I feel like I've got a pretty good idea on what I need to do. And I decide to start solving it around these 5s in the top left, because there doesn't seem to be many ways you can satisfy all of these 5s. So at this point, I don't think I've clued onto this yet, but this line I've drawn in the top left is actually, it completely fulfills the requirements of the left-hand pair of 5s. And there's really no other way to do it. And that adds some interesting constraints both on the 7 and also on these other 2 5s. So now I've kind of split the 5s into, like I've drawn like a line of 4s, and then the 7 has a line of 3 underneath it, but that's not going to be good enough. I contemplate this like cross thing, but that's no good either. In the end, I end up drawing a line of length 5 here, and then a line of length 2. So maybe I should just pause this again, because this is, I think this was quite a fast solve, and so one of the problems with doing commentary here is that there's actually not a lot of time where I'm just sort of stuck talking about what I'm doing. So let me rephrase this again. So if we look in the top left, based on my hunch about the rules currently, that 5 in the very top left, there's only one spot that you can walk to from it. That's the one on its left. And so all 5 tiles along that path have to be shaded in, because we need to be able to reach 5 shaded tiles from that node. And the only way we can do it is to fill that path in. So once we've got that as a guaranteed, like this has to be true, then from the 7 still needs to complete, it still needs like 2 more squares. And it can't go north, it can't go east, so it has to go south. So I know I can fill in the 2 squares south. And this already is beginning to feel like a puzzle to me, because the 7 is sharing some of the 5's solution. So there's like interactions between the different pieces of information on the board, but it's also able to use extra space to complete its constraints of having 7 shaded tiles. So this is beginning to feel really good. My only concern is now that as I'm doing this at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, these rules sound like a puzzle, but it doesn't feel solvable. That feels way too constrained. There are too many numbers on the board. I don't see how I could possibly do this. So I think most of the rest of the video is just me doing it. But this top left-hand area is interesting because from the 5, I realized there really aren't many places I can go. Like I can't go too close to the 1. 1s are really interesting in this because they often can't share with other numbers because they really can only have 1 shaded tile next to them. So the 5 was like, it probably does need to be 5, but where exactly should it go? And actually, I really enjoyed fine-tuning this solution, because once you begin to start kind of trading squares between different numbers. So at the moment, the 8 it has 3 different paths coming off from it, a path going north, west, and east. The east one it shares with the 3, the north one it shares with a 5. But I could make that east path like 1 tile longer and then take 1 tile off one of the other paths. So you begin to start doing this jockeying, and as you take a tile off one path, you're also creating space that would allow you to extend another path somewhere else. So it's a pretty interesting puzzle. I actually really enjoyed the solving part of it. The bottom right here area here was really tricky. There's so many 1s, and the 3 and the 2, in some ways it ends up being like it ends up being obvious in a way, because there is only one way you can satisfy this exact collection of numbers. But the 3 and the 2 next to each other was really tough, and it took me a while to realize, like, oh, I'd made this assumption about where the 1 should go at the very bottom left, and that shouldn't have been there. And funnily enough, it's because when I was doing the guesses to try and like see what the red rule was, I put that shape in the bottom left in, and I think mentally I just was like, oh, this is correct, I'm going to leave it. But actually it turns out it wasn't correct. So I'm using the annotations here to decide where numbers can't go. I conclude that the 5 really can't have much next to it at all because it's surrounded by 1s, so it probably has to share most of its solution with 6, with the 6 above it, and it actually shares all of its it shares all 5 tiles with the 6 in the end, I think. Now I'm going to clean up in the bottom left direction. This is me realizing I've made a mistake with the 1. I think I go back and forth a couple of times here, maybe. Oh, no. Yeah. Yep, that's correct, Mike. And then that one can... No, that's okay. Exactly. The 0 is kind of interesting. I don't really use it here, but I can see that I'm pretty close now. I shouldn't have clicked guess there. If I'd like really cared about the score, I could have just like assessed this myself, because it's pretty obvious that I've broken 2 of the 5s. So it just takes me a little bit of time to fix it here. Again, it's kind of interesting because here it feels bad to extend the 5 in that direction, but it can't go anywhere else. And so once you extend it, you're like, well, okay, well, how can I fix these other numbers? The 8 now needs an extra tile, which is giving it there. The 3 needs to be completely redone because now I can't put tiles north or west of it, so it needs a path going somewhere else. And then I realized, like, oh, that circle with no number in actually just means you can put whatever. It's just a blocker. So overall, it was a really satisfying solve. And I think, you know, I think there's a part of it where it's like, oh, well, was it satisfying just because you did it very quickly? And whereas, like, you know, when you take a long time, it's kind of embarrassing. So obviously you don't like it as much. But I think the two are linked, right? Because I think part of the joy of Scriddle is having momentum. And when you've got theories and you're testing theories, it feels really good. When the solve itself doesn't have to be too long, I think like that's also really good. And so I think there is something to do with the fact that, like, yeah, like these pacier solves are kind of fun. And the longer ones can sometimes drag out, where it's not that what's left is hard, it's that you genuinely don't know what is left to do or where you might have made a mistake. But this one was a lot of fun. And also a curious one, which I didn't really think about till it was done, but kind of only has one rule, which in some ways makes it quite hard to test, because often you make progress in Scriddle by, you know, there's a rule you don't understand, but you end up breaking another rule and you work on that one instead for a bit. But this one wasn't like that, and it still was a pretty cool solve. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about doing the post-hoc commentary. It's kind of interesting. I think you can dive deeper into some of your rationale, but I don't know what it would feel like to commentate like an hour-long video. I might not do that. But yeah, that was fun. Thanks for watching.